So even when the odds are stacked against you, there is a mechanic within the dice that can save your little hiney or strike the killing blow.
Even I don't have all hope lost, right?
No,
as long as I can roll a crit. So that's cool.
Well, I am extremely happy you asked that question, because that is why I love the game so much.
There are few things better than stepping away from the screens, unplugging and sitting around a table to do battle with your friends. Every week, Third Floor Wars brings you the latest strategies, tactics, and reviews on board games, card games, and miniature games like Malifaux. If you want useful information on the games you already play, or new insights on great games other people are playing, you are in the right place. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk broadcast.
Welcome to the Third Floor. I'm Craig, and today we have two guests trying to convince me that I should be playing Warhammer Underworlds by Games Workshop. Jason, welcome to Tabletop Talk.
Hey, how are you?
Good. So Jason and I have known each other, for how long now? 6, 7 years?
Yeah, close to 7 years.
So we met right when the local GW store opened, and he liked to play 40K, and I liked to play 40K. And over the last 7 years, we've hung out, played all kinds of different games with each other. We both have little daughters about the same age, so it's great to finally have you on the show, Jason. Can you give the audience kind of a little bit of a background about you as a gamer?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. And it's great to be here, so thanks for having me. But my tabletop game started back in high school. I got introduced to 40K. I've been a long-time board game player ever since my youth, which is many, many moons ago. And currently, I focus on all GW product. So I play a lot of 40K. As we're going to talk about tonight, Warhammer Underworlds is my flavor of the week. I've been in Age of Sigmar, really any GW IP. I'm all about it and like to play it. And I'm also a co-host of a podcast called Battlemallet.
Very nice. And for those of you, and then we'll give you links in the show notes, the Battlemallet podcast is a great podcast that you should add to your subscriptions. So our other guest is Jimmy. Jimmy and I have known each other for about the same time, met at the same place, which is that GW store that opened up here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Jimmy, I think you and we started playing Hobbit, back then called Lord of the Rings, I think before we played 40K. Does that sound right to you?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So we spent a embarrassing amount of money on that game. And probably one of my favorite runs as a gamer was Jimmy and I, once a week at least, just meeting up and just beating the hell out of each other with Lord of the Rings. And what was fun about it is, each time we would build towards each other, paint up a couple more models, and beat the hell out of them. What's crazy is I was terrible as a gamer back then, as I am now. So Jimmy pretty routinely routed me, but we had good times. Jimmy, can you give the audience kind of an idea of your background as a gamer?
Yeah, sure. So similar to Jason, I started playing back in high school. I played Warhammer 40K. And as I got older, I took a little break and then came back into the game when I moved to North Carolina. Started playing Warhammer 40K with you guys, as well as The Hobbit. When I played The Hobbit with Craig, that's actually when I first learned about painting in more than 3 colors. So that was good for me to find out. And then after that, after playing The Hobbit, then started playing other games like Malifaux, and have played Malifaux competitively.
Very nice. All right. So kind of the idea today is we're going to talk about this GW game. And I've watched you guys play it. I've read the rules. I actually own the game itself, the Underworlds starter box set. And even though I haven't played yet, I'm anxious to, and probably for one reason and one reason only, because you guys love it so much. So I respect the fact that the two of you, really have latched on and enjoy this game, and respect your guys' opinion. So really, we're going to kind of walk through what it is that kind of set the hook for the two of you. We're going to break it into 4 sections. So there's really 4 things that are going to get me into a game and that are going to keep me into a game. And that's the theme. what happens kind of pre-game. So what are the decisions that are being made before you ever put models on the table? The in-game mechanics. So what, while you're playing, makes the game cool and unique. And then I do enjoy the hobby aspect, so we'll kind of finish up talking about that. Now, before we met up, I went over to the website and I wanted to check out and see how Games Workshop describes the game. So here's what Games Workshop says about Warhammer Underworlds. Warhammer Underworlds is a game for 2 to 4 players in which each player takes their warband of fantastically detailed Citadel miniatures and pits them against their rivals in battle in the dark city of Shadespire. It's a game of strategy, fast-paced combat, and devious ploys, and though you'll find this an easy game to pick up, only the most experienced players will master it. All right, so let's talk about theme. Jason, I know it's kind of set in the same world as Age of Sigmar, is that right?
That is correct. It is set in the same universe as Age of Sigmar, except this is a city that used to... it was a human city that thrived, and they kind of mastered this technology of shade glass that allowed them to live forever. And Nagash got pretty mad about this, so he trapped them into this city. So the city is kind of people go there, so the warbands that are in the game are searching for the long lost treasures of the city of Shadespire, but the ghosts and everybody they get trapped there in this because Nagash will not let them die. He has cursed them forever to live in this peril world and city. So that's the theme.
That's kind of cool because it, I guess it gives them a ton of flexibility as far as bringing in kind of new war bands, right? And that's what they're called, right? War bands?
Yeah, the armies are called war bands. And yes, it does give them huge flexibility. So, Shadespire was season 1, and that's where they introduced 8 war bands that kind of either were the protectors of the city or war bands that wandered in there looking for these treasures and long lost Cataphracti relics. And then season 2 is tied into the AOS Age of Sigmar narrative, where Nagash, makes this huge earthquake of magic and power, and he actually cracks open the Night Vault, which is the dungeon of the city of Shadespire, where all the human wizards that were using the technology were kind of sealing stuff away. So then they introduced a whole bunch of other war bands that way.
Gotcha. That's cool. So Jimmy, it's, the theme sounds cool. And Jimmy, what I'm wondering from you, as somebody who is a little bit newer to the game, you came to it from Malifaux. Do you feel like, all the cool stuff that Jason just talked about, does that translate to the table, or does the game end up becoming more mechanical while you're playing?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, someone locking a bunch of people in a dungeon sounds a lot like Craig's house. Second of all, so I really enjoy, as you guys know, playing competitive games. And this is kind of just the latest competitive game that I've jumped into based on experiences with playing with friends and kind of exploring other options. I think all of us are very lucky that in 2019 there are a lot of amazing options for wargaming and competitive wargaming, especially more than there were 10 years ago. And for me, when I go to a competitive wargaming event, I primarily value 2 things: agency and fun. So agency meaning that each player's decisions ultimately determine the outcome, right? So in essence, skill and game performance override luck. And secondarily, fun, because of course everyone wants to have fun when we hobby. So Malifaux definitely provided both when I played, and I find very similar parallels to Underworlds. So Malifaux is a very good game, had a lot of good innovative design elements that are actually slowly being adopted into a lot of other systems these days, I'm seeing. For me, the 3 design features that drew me to the game were 1, alternating activations, 2, a randomness mitigation, and in Malifaux it's more with a fate deck and control hand, and 3, diverse objectives that didn't just require killing enemy models, right? So I think those design features are some of the things that drew folks to Malifaux, and I think Underworlds has those exact same mechanics. So for their part, they have alternating activations. to mitigate randomness. While the game uses 6-sided dice and incorporates what's essentially a D3 system instead of a D6 die system, and includes lots of reroll mechanics, and even incorporates kind of an innate die success into your roll occasionally, that you can guarantee at least one success and a roll off. And while there's a lot of incentives to killing enemy models to score glory points, which is how you win, there are many successful warband designs that have other more passive ways of scoring glory and scoring objectives. So, in fact, the guy that just won Adepticon had a deck built just for holding and scoring objectives.
Yeah. So it's what I think is cool, and is that, and you kind of hinted at this, Jimmy, Malifaux sets a pretty high bar. I mean, you and I when you were playing Malifaux a lot, you and I are pretty high on the game, for a lot of the reasons as you said. And for this game to have captured you the way it has, tells me that it's not a step down, that it's at least lateral and not a step up, because once you kind of get used to some of those innovative design features we see from Malifaux, it's hard to go backwards and lose some of that. So it's interesting. I'm anxious to talk more about it when we get into the game itself. Jason, do you see the theme hit the table? I know the game is kind of a hybrid between miniature game, board game, and card game. And I know it's built for competitiveness. Do you find it as thematic as playing Warhammer or playing Age of Sigmar? Or is it, strictly just an arena place to kind of battle it out with cool miniatures?
Yeah, for me, Craig, the theme is great, and it definitely builds a story, and they have some different play styles or different play modes, like with a giant and capture the flag style of game modes that fill in the theme. But for me, really much when it's on the tabletop, it is just the competitiveness. Like, yeah, we're two warbands, but you don't really get this the sense of we're fighting over anything that matters as far as like artifacts or objectives like you do in a traditional war game. It's more because I think the game is almost like a hybrid of a board game. And it's just really nice that you have that theme. The theme of warbands. That's the only time that theme is present and cool for me, is the actual build of the warbands, what they're all about, kind of their play style. That ties back to the Age of Sigmar realm, but the actual gameplay itself is more about two warbands or four warbands on the pitch, slugging it out for glory.
Yeah. And, as much as I talk about themes important to me, I'm okay with that. If the mechanics are there, which we're going to head into, and it sounds like they are. But, to GW's credit, they've got such gorgeous miniatures that, it's hard not to kind of get the feel for it. Right. And watching you guys play and kind of looking at some of the decks and, seeing you go through it, I get what you're talking about, Jason, where you get kind of a feeling for the flavor of each warband, and that they're a little asymmetrical. They've each got their own little style. So that makes sense to me. So that's good. Jiminy, any last thoughts about theme?
Yeah. So I think, while to Jason's point, when you're in the game, right, I think it's just a competitive war game / board game between two players. That all said, each warband has their own specific set of cards, and the specific cards they have names that are actually pretty brilliant and very thematic and very fitting per the warband. My favorite personally is Scritch is the greatest, yes, which is a Skaven card. But there are plenty of other cards that are not only have thematic titles, but then in game are actually very thematic as well.
So an orc warband plays like orcs, Skaven play like Skaven, that type of thing?
100%. And in fact, we'll go cool. into the Inspire mechanic, which is a kind of a core feature of the game. And even the way each warband inspires is also very thematic.
That's awesome. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to talk about the pregame. What are the key decisions that you have to make before your models hit the table? Okay, so a good war game in my mind or a good game period, is going to really put you in a situation where you have to make decisions before maybe even you both get to the table, and those decisions are going to matter. Now, I prefer that those decisions don't decide the outcome, but I want them to really matter. And obviously, one of the first things that matter pregame is kind of determining how do you win the game. So most war games these days have variable win conditions. I assume, Jason, that that's the case with this game.
That is correct. So there are many ways that you can win the game. The pregame is probably the most important piece of Underworlds. And for me, it's really what kind of hooked me into this game. So, to give a parallel to other GW product, I was always that list tinkerer. I always thought about like the what if, and then the rules interaction with the what if for 40K Age of Sigmar. So what Warhammer Underworlds does really, really well is that pregame. So when you buy warbands and you buy the core set, you get a bunch of cards. Out of those cards, you build 2 decks. You have your objectives deck, and then you have your gambit and upgrades or ploys deck, which is called your power deck. And really the win condition is determined by your objective deck. So there's at this point, I think there's hundreds of objectives, but they all boil down to a couple basic things, right? Kill something, hold something, do something. And the cool thing is like we were talking about before, is each warband has kind of its set cards which have the set statistics on them, so they're set stats, so the way they kind of want to play, but you can pick whatever objectives you want from a universal set, and then you also have warband specific objectives. So really GW is giving you the tools to play certain warbands how you want to play them. In season 1 I played Sepulchral Guard, which are skeletons. Their gimmick is they can res themselves from the dead. In that I played a much more passive, so I'm going to hold objectives, make you come to me, score glory, which that's what you're trying to get. Like you're trying to score glory to get the win condition more than your opponent. But I did a lot of passive, so I'm going to move and I'm going to do movements, shenanigans, and hold objectives, not really care what you're doing. But then the other element of that, what goes back to just the basic game, is if you kill something, you score glory. So there's 2 ways to win. Go through the objectives in your hand and kill stuff.
Gotcha. So the killing stuff is just it's a standing way to get glory, right? Regardless of the deck.
Correct.
Gotcha. But what really? So out of curiosity, Jason, like percentage wise, if I were to score 20 points in a game, just generally speaking, what percentage of those are going to be because I killed something, and what percentage are going to be from the objective deck? I'm trying to figure out the impact of the objective deck.
The objective deck is going to give you that push up and above and beyond to win the game. So if you score 20 glory, depending on what warband you're playing, so most warbands can run anywhere from 3 up to 9 characters. So like that one that has 9 characters is bleeding 9 glory if they all die.
Right.
So in that game, you're probably scoring 11, objectives and 9 if you wipe them out. But it's very unlikely to wipe out the other warband. That happens very, very infrequently. So I would say out of 20 glory, 14 or 15 are from your glory deck, your objective deck, and you got about 5 just scored on. But the game really swings because as you're building your deck and constructing the way that your strategy behind this pre-game going in, like let's say I want to play an aggro warband, which is just all up in your face and trying to kill you, those objectives are going to stack. So a simple I kill one of your guys, which would net me 1 glory, I probably have 2 or 3 cards in my hand that give me additional glory. So the next that one guy turns into 3-4 glory points and I'm off to a good start.
So how big is the objective deck that you bring to the table?
12 cards.
And how many do you have? Do you have all 12 available to score at any point in time? Do they cycle? How does that work?
So each round, the game is 3 turns, and you have 4 activations in each turn, and it's alternate activation type terms. So you go, I go. The beginning of each hand or each round, you draw up an objective hand of 3 cards.
Okay.
So you can cycle through 9. Like if you were only scoring at the end of your turn every single time, you could cycle through 9. Pre-game, you're allowed to burn like mulligan a hand. So if you draw up 3 objectives, and you're like, there is no way I'm scoring these right away, you can ditch them. They're gone for the entire game, but it allows you to draw up 3 more. And then some objectives are scored instantly. So once you meet the condition, you score it and you draw into another one, which allows you to cycle the deck quickly.
Nice. And that mulligan feature is kind of what Jimmy was talking about with the mitigating the chance aspect of it. So that's cool. I like that. And so the objective cards themselves, are they all going to be warband specific, or are there generic objectives that I would have the same 3 or 4 objectives that you might have in your deck?
Yeah, I mean, they're both. So there are universal cards, both from an objective standpoint and the power cards that you can select. And then there are warband specific. So that's really where the theme tries to play in. So if you're playing, my newest warband is Godsworn Hunt, which is a kind of Conan the Barbarian style of warband, very glass hammer.
Yeah. Beautiful models.
They are amazing. But they have kind of these, their gimmick for objectives are oaths. So you can dedicate at the beginning of your turn, I'm going to accomplish this, and you announce it to your opponent, which is really weird because a lot of the objectives are hidden until condition is met. But if I do that and I reveal it to you, I get additional glory. So it's kind of like, I'm going to do this, try to stop me.
That is thematic, right? So the kind of that cocky fighter, even though what I'm going to do it to you anyway.
Yes,
that's pretty cool, and really fits you, Jason, in real life. So, so it sounds like Jimmy, all of these pregame stuff, is important. In fact, it'll decide whether you win or lose. As someone who came from other game systems, how do you see the pregame?
I think what you want, right, in any game is you want every decision to matter. I think that's certainly true for Underworlds in the pregame segment. I think, this game is relatively new, right? It's been around out for, I don't know, Jason can correct me, but a year and a half or maybe 2 years. And I think as people are exploring the game more, they're discovering slowly new elements of the game that can become more strategic. So, you start by, of course, as Jason mentioned, is a kind of a pseudo board game. So each of you have a board, right, to place, and the boards have to line up and connect. So you roll off to decide who gets to place the first board, right? And whoever wins that roll places the first board, and then the other player gets to place their board, which is at that point unrevealed to the opponent, but gets to place a board not only that is unrevealed to the opponent, but they can align them however they want. So it gives them an advantage as far as positioning. However, the flip side of that is that there are 5 objective markers in the game that are placed after this, and the person that placed the first board has 3 of the 5, so the majority of those objective markers. So if you have a objective scoring, objective marker holding warband, you actually want to lose that roll sometimes, if not most of the time. So every decision matters. I think then, of course, you go and you place the models and you draw your hand. And I think that going back to the word I used earlier, that agency is very important. And for me, as far as evaluating how the quality of a game, and I think Underworlds has that in all the decisions.
And do you like the deck building aspect, Jimmy?
I do. I think, for me, I'll kind of, pepper this in here over the course of the discussion. There are a few areas where this game is certainly very different from Malifaux, and it's hard to call them advantages or disadvantages because it really depends on just how you want to play a game. But as far as the pregame elements and as far as the war bands and things like that, I think there are kind of 3 things that I enjoy. I think one, there is having just between 3 to 9 models in a warband is really nice. In my mind, that really makes it more of a skirmish game. I mean, in Malifaux, if I went to a tournament, I'd bring 40 painted models, right? That's not really a skirmish game at that point. That's just like 40K or not quite Warhammer Fantasy, but it's not a skirmish game at that point anymore. So I think just bringing a few models is nice. So model count's nice, and I think, but to the opposite of that is that there are fewer models, there are fewer options, right? But I think that's where the deck building comes in, because the deck building allows you to really, to Jason's point, field a very unique warband or unique warband plus deck in any matchup you have, because your opponent, while they know what your models do, they have no idea what your deck's going to do before the game, right? So you could be scoring all kinds of different objectives that are unrevealed to your opponent until you play them. The ability of each warband to have flexibility to play certain play styles, all dependent upon that deck, is great. And that's really what adds to the complexity of the game, which I think is what a lot of us, especially folks that have played an incredibly complex game like Malifaux, look forward to.
Yeah. And it's, in a lot of war games, you're spending time building a crew, right? And it sounds to me like what you're really doing here is you're picking a crew, because it sounds like it's set pretty much, right? You get the same models if you pick this, this warband and that warband. There's not variation in which models you can bring, right? Those are set.
Correct.
But where the variation comes in is how you're building your objective deck, what is it, action deck? What is the other deck called?
Your power deck, yeah.
Your power deck, yeah.
Yeah, and to provide additional kind of color to what Jason was mentioning earlier, and we can talk about this more later as far as just the actual gameplay, but there, in general, multiple ways to score. Some of them, to Jason's point, are more aggro, right? You kill a model, you score a glory from killing that model, and then you also score a glory from like a condition that you meet on your objective, which is kill a model and do the exact damage that's required to take them out. So not more damage than their wounds total or less damage. Well, obviously you wouldn't kill them if it was less, but don't kill them the exact amount of damage that's required to take them out of action, right? Or kill them with a special type of attack, which is a cleave attack, or there are a variety of things. And I'm kind of just riffing here, but there are a variety of conditions that you meet when you kill a model, you can score. But obviously, someone listening to this would be like, why wouldn't everyone just score or try to score their glory aggro, right? Because you already gain a glory from killing a model and you just tack on glory on top of that. Well, all those more aggressive objectives that require you to kill a model, they're typically only allowed to score one glory at a time, unless it's a really, hard or very specific, objective you have to meet in the action. While more passive scoring objective cards, ones that require you to hold objective markers until the end of the turn, or they're required to do, 4 different actions over the course of, all 4 activations in your turn, they score 2 or 3 glory at a time. As a result, the more passive or objective holding warbands certainly can catch up, if not score more than aggressive warbands, even though the aggressive warbands have the advantage of gaining additional glory by killing a model and also removing another model from an enemy model from the board.
Yeah, so at first view, it sounds like the aggro style seems obvious, but that's kind of neat how they've structured it to encourage different play styles. I like that. That's cool. Jason, how much would, if I know you're playing, the warband that you've got there, am I going to see roughly the same type of cards in your power deck and in your objective deck, or do you surprise people? How much variation do you see from 2 guys that play the same warband?
Well, I am extremely happy you asked that question, because that is why I love the game so much. Yes, the warbands, because the cards are the same. So if you're playing dwarves, their same mechanic, the way they inspire, their stat line, the 4 fighters, all the same. But the way that you play dwarves may be completely different the way that I play dwarves. Now, there'd be some people out there that say, well, to be the most efficient, you have to play warband X in this play style. But for me, I play off that. So I, going to Nova last year, playing the skeletons, they were an quote unquote underpowered warband. And I played them kind of that passive aggressive, where I went back and I made you think I was only going 4 objectives, which sucked you in. But then I had enough cards in my deck to really deliver a punch to take out the few fighters that you sent at me. So it caught people off guard. The current warband that does this really well is like a Tzeentch warband, or the Gits, the Tzeentch being just that, Tzeentch from Age of Sigmar or 40K, and Gits being the little goblin things. You don't know when somebody puts those warbands across from you, really what they're going to play. Like that Tzeentch guy may play all into the blue horror and be very passive and trying to get cards out that score extra glory called tomes at the end of the game, or they could be extremely aggro with their spellcaster and come right at you. Gits, same thing. They have so many fighters, they can overwhelm you and just rush you with 9 different fighters on the board. But at the same time, because they have 9 fighters, they're really good at holding objectives. Plus they have a bunch of special rules that allow them to scurry around the map rather quickly. So you kind of play it out. And then another thing that is really awesome about the game is an official game is best of 3. So the game plays so quick, and that's, one of the things, the reasons that I'm in there. You can normally play a game between 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and you're done with one round. Well, the game is meant to be played over an hour and a half of 3 rounds. So now there's this whole gamesmanship where we come out game 1 and, I might play a little passive and to throw you off and maybe not show my whole hand, or maybe I have the game in hand and I'm winning and I don't score some glory on purpose so you don't see my full strategy by the end of the game. And then that way, game 2, there's still a surprise. You don't know what cards are coming out of my hand. But it also plays in the opposite of maybe you figure out what someone's tactics are. So, they're playing what is normally known as an aggressive warband, but they're playing it passively and scoring objectives. So game 1, you lay out your warbands and you're like, I'm going to run away. All of a sudden, the next thing you know, you lose by 9 glory. Well, game 2, you're going to position your boards and those objectives to be right up on them so you can disrupt their play style. So there's a lot of gamesmanship and counterbalance through the things, allowing you to play the warbands in the way that you see fit.
I gotta say, there's something you said there, Jason, that's extremely attractive to me, because when I'm playing games, and I don't care if it's, a big war game or a small, board game, I hate gotcha type stuff, right? Where, you end up scoring or winning because I just didn't know about something. And, the fact that, I've got my set decks and my set war bands, which you don't know exactly what they're going to be. You might have some ideas. Maybe there's 2 or 3 ways I might go, but you don't really know. And we sit down, we play around, and you might see, some of my deck, all of my deck. And when I go into round 2, both players are kind of past that gotcha moment, except, for some of the gamemanship that you talked about. I like that a lot. And I think best of 3 is a great format to mitigate and increase that player agency, because, ultimately, we want things to be exciting, and randomness can cause exciting, but ultimately you'd like the person who made the best decisions to win the game. And it sounds like, despite the fact that there's dice and there's cards, there's enough of those decisions being made and things are spread out over multiple rounds that it really kind of makes sure that, the one who made the best choices wins.
Yeah, and that, just to emphasize that point even more, there are going to be those moments where you're like, oh crap, he has that card. Like, for example, rebound. You set up this whole plan, you run in, you smack the guy in the face, you're like, I've killed you and I've scored 17,000 glory for all these objectives because my plan worked. And they're like, oh wait, here's a reaction card, which is rebound. So which can be very much, I got you. Like, oh crap, I didn't know you had rebound. And what rebound does is I roll a die. If it's successful, that attack is actually applied to your fighter and you die. But what GW has done is those type of got you moments they've put into die rolls. And that one card in particular, which is the biggest got you in the game, is a 33% chance to be successful. And then, oh wait, you may have cards in your hand which can mitigate that even more by like denying it. So yeah, like, yes, you get to see the 3 games, so there's less I got you. You get to see the play style and adapt your play style to the opponent you're playing. Plus the quote unquote I got you moments are typically all about a dice roll, which I think is kind of cool because then it puts it into chance.
Yep. So Jimmy, by the 3rd round when you're playing, do you generally get a feel for what the other person's bringing to the table by the 3rd round, or there's still some surprises that come out of their decks?
That's a great question. I think it depends on how the previous 2 games went. Sometimes you can go through all your cards, sometimes you don't. I just echo what both you guys said. That actually, in a tournament setting, right, the best of 3 format is my favorite part of the game, and I think it's actually the biggest differentiator between Underworlds and Malifaux in Underworld's favor, in my mind, is that while Malifaux, I think it certainly provides some things that Underworlds doesn't, right? I mean, there's certainly a lot more options, right? There's certainly a lot, there are more models, there are, more unique actions. All these things are, they're 5 turns instead of, the short, 30, 40-minute game. The fact that you really you get out of that gotcha type play style, which was very prevalent in Malifaux because there were so many rules. And even in playing 3rd edition, I think they've worked on that, but at the same time, because, it is such a complex game, right? It's one of the reasons why lots of folks like it, but because it is such a complex game, you're still going to have lots of gotchas because, no one can possibly really know everything in the game. So I think it creates a much healthier game environment. I think players feel more satisfied playing games in a tournament setting as a result. Getting that first game kind of out of the way, and if something just incredible happens, or maybe you just have terrible luck. That happens in Malifaux too. You just draw 5 terrible control hands, and and card flips don't go your way, and key flips like that can you can feel burned by that, right? But typically, from what I found playing Underworlds, is that can certainly happen for one game. It's difficult to see happen over the course of 3 games. So I think everyone generally has their moment where they feel like they've done something and scored something and had a good time within that format.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. All right. So I like that, guys. I like, there's a lot of what you talked about that's attractive to me. I like that you have some really key decisions to make at the beginning of the game. I like the switch up. I'm used to, building armies and building crews and building gangs and things like that. It's kind of neat to kind of take some of that Magic the Gathering feel and get into the deck building. And Jason, I appreciate that, even though I might be playing the same warband as you are, I might attack it a different way. So that's great. All right, guys, when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the cool mechanics that really are going to make this the game that I need to be playing next.
If you're an athlete, the greatest motivator of all is the fear of letting your teammates down. After all, a team is only as good as its weakest link. So you owe it to those wearing the same jersey as you to be your best every time you step on the field. That's why there's no vape in team. When you vape, you can expose your lungs to toxic chemicals that can damage your lungs. If you're a step behind, the team's a step behind. Brought to you by The Real Cost and the FDA.
Okay, so we've picked our warbands, we've built our control decks, we've built our power decks. We're sitting down at the table, we've set out our boards, which was, by the way, another aspect of that pregame I thought was really interesting. Now I want to get a sense of, when the dice start rolling, when the models start moving, Jason, what are really some aspects of this game that you think put it above other games that you've played?
Yeah, I mean, for me, being a lover of the game, it's the whole package, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the actual dice. So even when the odds are stacked against you, there is a mechanic within the dice that can save your little hiney or strike the killing blow, and that's called the crit. So on every single dice, GW game, so 6-sided die, there's an exclamation point. And if I'm attacking you, Craig, and I roll, let's just say I have to roll 3 dice and I'm hitting on Furies, which are the little sword marks on the attack dice. And I roll 3 swords. And you're like, damn it, Jason, you make me suck at games again. So I roll 3 and you have your lonely orc there and he's blocking on 1 dice and he's looking for shields. You're like, I can't block 3 successes. Well, you can roll that dice, and if you roll that crit, it negates everything. And as well as I cannot push you, which is another game mechanic. If I score a successful attack, I can push you away. I cannot do that as well. So it really levels that playing field as far as giving you a chance. Like you got that puncher's chance in there to get the knockout. So I really like that. And then for me, being a father of 2 with very limited time, this game, what makes it so unique is it's as simple as a board game. So if you and I just buy the starter set, we can be rolling dice in a matter of minutes. But it's for me, it's quick, it's easy, but it's extremely, extremely complex when you get to that next level. And there's nothing better than going out to the game store on the every other Tuesday that I get with my permission from my wife and be able to play 4, 5, 6 games of Underworlds worth $40K. That was all night. Like I was playing one game, having one interaction with one of my friends. With this game, I can play 5 games in that limited time that I have, and they make my brain hurt. And then, like we talked about with deck building, it allows me to be engaged in the hobby all week long because I'm constantly tweaking decks. And then, I do like to paint sometimes, but I don't like to paint whole armies. So I paint 3. I can do that. So it allows me to get my hobby on too.
Yeah, and Jimmy mentioned that too. I think that's a huge selling point. The fact that granted, games like Wild West Exodus and Malifaux, granted, we might only have 5 or 10 models on the table. But Jimmy made a great point in saying, but you're bringing 40 to the tournament. And so you're not painting 5 or 10 models. Whereas this, you're playing the same warband for the whole tournament, right? And you've tweaked up and got this deck in place, and then it's go. Which I think is really attractive. And boy, oh boy, being able to get in several games in a night. I mean, there's not board games anymore that you can find that you can get in 3 or 4 or 5 games in a night. So that's great. And I never thought about it, Jason, but when you play a war game, whether it be 40K or Malifaux, I go out on a Tuesday night to play a game. I'm going to interact with one person mainly the whole time. I hadn't thought about the fact that you could go out on a Tuesday night and play 3 or 4 different, guys or gals. So that's pretty cool. I like that. I like that a lot. A little bit follow up on the dice though, Jason. So does everybody have the same dice?
Yeah, like everybody has attack dice and everybody has defense dice. They're the same style. So like, defense dice have have 2 shields on them. They have a dodge marker, and then they have the crit, as well as some support mechanics. So if your fighters have friendly units by, you can mitigate your odds by that. But everyone rolls the same dice. What is different is on their cards, their stat lines, some people will be more accurate as far as they'll hit on hammers, which a hammer roll on one dice would be 50-50. You got 2 hammers and you have a crit. So 50% chance on that one die. Or they maybe roll more dice. So Godsworn Hunt, one of the coolest things about them is they're with the interactions of the cards and my stat line. I multiple times in a game will be rolling 6, 7, 8 dice at once.
Nice.
But if I don't get that crit, your 1 die may save you.
That makes sense to me. And you mentioned what the crit can do as far as saving me. What happens on the attack dice if I hit a crit? So if you roll 2 crits and I'm a defender, what do those 2 crits mean to me as the defender?
It's the same. It's the same thing. So if I roll 2 quick crits, the only way you can block it is by rolling 2 crits. Which if you're not rolling 2 dice, then you cannot block that attack. So same mechanic back and forth. Criticals. Can you roll a crit? It's the way to win the game.
Yeah, that's cool. So you always have that little Hail Mary.
Yes. Yeah. And then there are card interactions off the dice rolls. So like Jimmy mentioned cleave earlier, which is a special rule for some characters that they'll actually ignore shields on defensive rolls. But then you accompany that with like some objectives. Say if you're successful with a cleave attack, you score an additional glory. So that's how the game is kind of intertwined, where everything meets together and makes that interaction. So.
Yeah, that's cool. And it, that kind of that dice mechanic is something that Fantasy Flight, I think, really did a lot with. But I don't know if I've ever seen kind of that crit aspect, and the way that can kind of be the save all or do all, which even I don't have all hope lost, right?
No,
as long as I can roll a crit. So that's cool. Jimmy, how about for you? So, Jason talked about the dice and really, how cool that is. What are some in-game mechanics that make you come back to the table?
Yeah, just to add a quick comment on the dice. So for Malifaux players, you could, first of all, rolling a crit, it's like rolling a 6, right? And on a 6-sided dice. And you could think of it almost like a very kind of mellow, muddled down version of a red joker, right? So it can happen in any dice roll. It kind of overrides everything else. It could, like Jason said, it could totally save you. If someone else rolls a bunch of crits, obviously they could totally bone you. So it creates that extra, a little extra element. Increase that randomness, enjoyment of a game, and crazy stuff can happen. But both parties can do it. And I think it's just overall the outcome is it's not certainly as severe as a red joker was in M2E.
But is there things outside of the dice that you find exciting in game that make you come back to the table?
Yeah. So I think just for me, the primary things in game that draw me to Warhammer Underworlds is going back to what I said earlier. In a best of 3 format, reduce the number of gotcha moments. I think that that creates a much healthier game environment in a game that, while, as I said, not as overall complex as Malifaux, but still very complex, right? I think it creates an environment that where everyone can kind of get something in and do something that's successful and have a good time. I think, 2, the idea of having just a real a true skirmish game model count, right? So just bringing a handful of models, taking them wherever you go, and just bringing some cards with you, busting those out. The setup, stuff with Malifaux or 40K or Age of Sigmar, you have to set up boards and terrain and all this stuff. It takes half an hour to set up a game. This, you can just sit down and start rolling dice with somebody in 5 minutes. And last thing, and this is not so much in game, but I think just overall, when you speak to the system itself, is the fact that I've been very surprised how much Games Workshop has really tended to this game and the rule system. I think their errata and FAQ schedule is very impressive, once a quarter at least, right? I think they one of the things they really do is curate the cards, because there are new releases that come out every quarter with new warbands and new cards. I think one that of course changes the meta, but if certain cards, maybe because of interactions they hadn't foreseen, which is rare but happens, really start dominating the meta, they'll come in with an errata or an FAQ, either to limit the number of those types of cards you can have via kind of a restricted list. We can only have, in the current edition of the game, a total of 5 restricted quote unquote cards in your deck out of the 32 or more you'll have. And there are, probably, I don't know, Jason, like 25, 30 restricted cards in the game right now. So it creates what this does is it creates an environment that allows you to build a lot more unique decks, right? So people aren't just all bringing the same good cards. I think their attention to, GW's attention to the game and to the competitive format of the game is really impressive. And I think that is really encouraging for me as someone who used to play Games Workshop games, but stopped because they really didn't seem to have much of an attention on providing good rule sets, just making models and making money. But now that a $1 billion company is paying very close attention to making a competitive rule set for a competitive game, that's a good thing for all gamers, I think.
Yeah, and that just, if I can jump in there real quick, and the other support element is GW supports this with quarterly kits. So they provide stores with trophies, to run tournaments, and they call them shade glass trophies, going back to that theme or setting. So they support it that way. There are alternative art cards, so they're not any unique cards that will break the game, but they're cards that just give you different artwork to show that you are out there. They give you acrylic tokens. So those are all just little cool trinkets that you want to go and play in a tournament and get, that are supported through GW. And then, we'd be really remiss, the other unique game element, and Jimmy mentioned it earlier, but every warband has an inspire mechanic. So like we talked about, every model or every character has a set stat line. Well, certain conditions through the game, you can inspire that model, which then change his stat line and most times make them a heck of a lot better. So you could go from, your defense could be on 1 dice. It could go to 3. It could go to 2. You could maybe go from dodges to shields, which improves your percentage chance of winning. Most times it may be an extra wound, or it may be extra move. That inspire, and all the war bands, going back to the theme, the way that they inspire is very thematic, like Jimmy was talking about with the Skaven or the skeletons. If you res some guy, if you bring them back to life, they become inspired. Godsworn Hunt, if you play an upgrade, they go crazy, like, oh, look, I have an upgrade, and then I inspire and become even more dangerous than I once was. So a lot of cool things.
That whole mechanic is really cool. Another game that has it is The Other Side by Weird Games, where you flip the card. And what I think is cool, and both games have this, and it's so cool, is that not only, instead of like morale that you see in a lot of games where, things happen and things get worse for you, here I love the fact that you're inspired, right? You go to glory, as they say in The Other Side. And I think that's really neat. And I love the fact that each warband does it differently, right? So we don't all flip our cards for the same reasons. And I think that's kind of a neat aspect too. I love that mechanic. When I met you guys at the store a couple weeks ago and I saw that they had that mechanic, that was very, very exciting. And going to what both you and Jimmy mentioned, it's, even though I'm on the outside looking in when it comes to GW, having played GW and being underwater with them for 12, 13 years, the company's changed, whether it be just the Warhammer TV and just the level of engagement. I didn't realize, though, that they have also kind of stepped up how much they support the game once they put it out, and Jason, you've played during this time, and Jimmy, you played during this time, they were terrible about just pushing stuff out. And then, you never heard about it again. You never got any updates. You never got any erratas. There were so many box games like that Dreadfleet and stuff that they put out that were good games, but they just kind of sold them and then they were done with them. I'm really happy to hear that the company has realized that, an active, live, curated community is going to be healthy. I love the fact that they're doing that support for local stores. So that's all of that is very, very cool. All right, guys, when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about the hobby and then we're going to wrap up. All right, the last thing that's going to keep me into a game and attract me to game is the hobby aspect. And Jason, this is where you and I are going to really, spend the next 90 minutes really talking about the intricacies of how to paint and how to build. I think this hobby section is going to be pretty short for this game because, you can talk about bad things about GW all day, right? You can say everything that you hate about that company. The thing you can't say is they have the best models out there, period. There is no other company out there putting out better small scale, non-bust models than GW. And not only from the sculpting, and even if you're not into the aesthetics, you got to appreciate the beauty of the sculpts. It's incredible how much easier it is to build their models and what they're able to do with 3 pieces that other companies can't do with 10 pieces. It's incredible. So I don't know whether we really need to discuss it back and forth. Jimmy, if you just want to talk real quick about the painting aspect, you talked about it's nice not have to paint a ton of models. Is there anything really to highlight there, or is it just these are great models and they're fun to paint?
Yeah, no, I mean, they're all great models, obviously, as you said. And to kind of, to even double down on that concept, of just easy to build models, right? I mean, each model, each miniature in the game can be snap assembled, which
it's crazy.
And they're all in like 3 to 4 major pieces, which, as it's like half as many pieces as there are the word Jan Lowe's beard. So I mean, it's pretty incredible. It's very easy to get into it, very easy to get others involved. For me, I personally enjoy maybe customizing models and converting, and you certainly can do that, right, for these models too. Because they're snap fit, there's maybe a little less opportunity. But, man, to be frank, after slaving over models for years and years now and building large armies, et cetera, it's actually a really nice break just to build and paint 3 or 4 models and go out and play. It's really nice.
And what's great is that for you only paint the front half of the model, right?
That's right.
So for those of you that haven't seen them, and maybe Jimmy, if I can talk you into sending some photographs, I want to get them on the website so people can see them. Jimmy's got a gorgeous warband that he's painted, some really great OSL and non-metallic metal work and stuff like that. But I got a huge tickle out of it because the backside of him, he's got the light coming from the front. So at first glance, it looks like he just painted the front of the models and not the back. And it's that's where that joke comes from. But they are gorgeous. So, Jimmy, if you can send me some pictures, I'd like to put them up on the site so people can see them.
Sure.
And just so everyone's aware, this game was designed with the models first. So these models were actually designed to be put in Age of Sigmar, and they're so good, and this is not an exaggeration, that GW said these models are too good to just be lost within a line, that we want to design a skirmish game around these models specifically, and that is how Underworlds started in the first place.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. Wow. Okay. All right. So closing arguments, gentlemen. I'll let Jason go first. Jason, I want the top 2 reasons why I should be playing Warhammer Underworlds.
Craig, because I know you value your time and you want to get as many games in as possible. That's why you should be playing Underworlds. It's a fast, fun, quick play game with a ton of depth that will allow you to flex your hobby muscles, or in your case, just roll some crits and have a chance.
That's great. How about for you, Jimmy? Top 2 reasons I need to be playing this game.
Yeah, I think it really provides a great competitive atmosphere, while also being accessible with kind of relatively simple rules to get started and fewer gotcha moments.
That's cool. One thing that these guys have been doing with me for several years now is twice a year we go camping here in North Carolina. There's a lake about 45 minutes outside of Raleigh. And I don't know, we're coming into the 6th, 7th year now that we've done this. And we usually try to go at least twice a year when we can. And it's 3 days. And some people come for all 3 days. Some people just come for 1 day. The main reason, guys, that I got that starter set for Underworlds is I'm going to get those models together because I think it's, pack small, which is perfect for camping, right? And I'm really hoping that we'll get a couple people, because there's a couple of the Malifaux crew that'll be coming out for camping, and they also play this game as well. So I have a sneaking suspicion this might be an Underworlds camping trip. So I'm excited about that. Jason, what's the easiest place for people to track down you and your great podcast?
Well, I'm just excited that I don't have to carry a 6x4 into the woods this year. So.
Like you ever did. Oh, no, actually, you know what? I was about to give you crap about that. You were the only other guy, except for me, that would lug a bunch of stuff up to make sure people could play games. So credit to you, Jason. You would actually lug that stuff up like I could. But yeah, it's a little bit easier bringing Underworlds, isn't it?
Yeah, it would definitely be easier. And then, to answer your question, where can people find me? So like I said, I am a member of the Battlemallet podcast. You can find us on Facebook at Battlemallet Podcast, or also on Twitter. I run under the handle of Tabled Noob on Twitter because I also suck at games. So Twitter at Battlemallet1. That's where you can find us. We have a Discord. I'm always in there hanging out, hobbying, playing games. Find us, come chat.
Yeah. And if you have not listened to the podcast, guys, that's it's a must listen. And all of the links that Jason talked about, I'm going to have those in the show notes. Jimmy, yeah, I mean, I don't even think you're on Twitter. You barely use Facebook. You don't have a podcast. You don't have a YouTube channel. So I don't know if there's anything you want to plug.
I mean, yeah, I just live in my hut in the woods. I had to drive an hour and a half to civilization to find a computer to do this. No, yeah, I mean, I think I'm looking forward to to playing Underworlds competitively. I'm going to Nova hopefully this year, and I may also go to Gen Con. A lot of former competitive, maybe current, but competitive Malifaux players are doing well with Underworlds now and getting into the game. So, most important for me is just having a large, robust, competitive wargaming community, right? And I think unfortunately, Weird's had a bit of a snafu for the past year between M2E and M3. Hopefully they recover, but in the meantime and going forward, certainly I think Underworlds is a wonderful proxy for Malifaux. Slightly different, but also a lot of advantages.
Well, I have to say that for me, it sounds like you can do both, which is really why I ended up breaking to the pressure from you guys and buying it, because they sound different from each other. They're two different experiences. It's not like just having two war games, right? They play different. They have different play times and things like that. So for those of you that you guys already know how to find the podcast, obviously because you're listening to the thing, make sure you check out the Third Floor Wars website. That's thirdfloorwars.com. And also make sure you check out our YouTube channel, where we've got weekly content going up as well as this podcast. Jason, Jimmy, can't thank you guys enough for taking the time, and I'll see you at the campsite.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
See you, Craig.
All right, take care, everybody. Thanks for listening. Be sure to rate and write a review on this podcast so we can find more people almost as cool as you are. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube by searching for Third Floor Wars. That's THIRD. We'll catch you next time on the Third Floor.